it's Anita from Just Anita. I'm gonna try to work today, because yesterday I tried and electronics didn't like me. So I'm trying a different topic from what I was gonna do yesterday. So today I'm doing 12 classic candies from the 70s we wish we could have back. And Stassy's in the back again, sleeping. Okay. So here goes. The site of a long lost favorite candy bar from childhood can bring back a flood of memories. While many nostalgia-focused websites and YouTube channels can give you a visual glimpse of the wrapper, nothing beats actually getting your hands on that candy and being able to take another bite. Some candy companies have obligated and brought back classics over time, like Astro Pops and the Wedgie Ball, but others remain lost to history. That doesn't mean that if you haven't seen your favorite in a while, you should assume the candy is no longer available. Some candy makers have reduced the market they sell in to certain regions, and you can check online to see if any candy stores will ship your favorite projects to you. However, many candies really faded away, either due to changing taste and poor sales, or in some cases, legal issues. Candies come and go each decade, but there are some that were popular back in the 1970s that stand out among the crowd. Here's a look at 12 classic candies from the 70s we wish we can have back. Marathon Ball. The Marathon Ball, introduced in 1973, was one of the more unique candy bars because of its shape. An 8-inch blade of chocolate-covered caramel. The wrapper even had ruler markings drawn on the one edge. Did anyone actually try to use that wrapper roll after finishing the candy? And the name was meant to describe how long it would take to finish the ball.
So it would take a marathon to finish it?
Maybe. It did take a while because that caramel was slick and chewy. And people joked about having to be careful of dental work when eating the candy. Say hi, Sashi. However, the bar didn't sell that well, and by 1981, malls pulled the candy from stores. This is the point where most websites and people online would point out that Cadbury released a similar ball with 3 years earlier called Curly Wurly.
How's that the same?
I don't know. I'm just reading what it says. Which is still available in the UK. The two balls are almost identical. But according to marathon fans who tried Curly Wurly, the caramel in the marathon ball was thicker and there was more of it. You'll occasionally see comments that someone recently saw marathon balls in this or that restaurant or candy store. But there's never any follow-up confirming the sighting. One thing to note is that a marathon ball was recently sold in stores. The British version of what the US calls Snickers used to be called Marathon, but it was renamed Snickers in 1990.
I never had that bar.
I have. To make the brands constant between countries. In 2024, Mars announced a limited edition rebranding back to Marathon. Jubes. Speaking of candy that was the arch enemy of dental work, Jubes were also a major memory for many from the 70s.
They're harder shells for the teeth.
Yes.
I should know.
The small, flat top gumdrops were so chewy and stiff that once you managed to bite into one, you could simply glue your jaw together until the candy softened. Then you had to deal with the newly softer candy sticking to all your teeth for several minutes.
Great way if you ever get clocked in the head.
Yeah. Jubes were the younger sibling of Judy Fruits, the much softer fruit-shaped candies. Jubes had actually been around for several decades. By the time the 1970s rolled around, the candy was first introduced in the 1920s by the Hyde Company. They were very popular and survived major sales and mergers. Hershey's bought Hyde in 1995. Foley and Sadders bought the rights to Hyde candies in 2002. And then Foley and Sadders merged with Pan in 2012. However, the candies were finally discontinued in the early 2020s. You may still find online listings for Jubes, but links led nowhere and pages have no Jubes for sale.
Jubes, isn't that the stuff I can't eat?
Mm-hmm. Full-size Jolly Rancher sticks.
Jolly Ranchers are good.
Yes, Jolly Rancher candy is still available.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even find the various labeled as sticks. However, you're not going to find the holy grail of Jolly Rancher candies. which were the longer sticks sold in the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s.
The decade we were born.
Yeah, the last one. These were glass-like slabs with ends you could gradually shape into sharp edges, breaking sections off that would stick to the roof of your mouth or your teeth, as these were yet another candy that would damage. I can't turn it off. Then to work and bind your jaw together. The flavors were memorable. Some were basic yet intense, such as an apple and watermelon. In the 1970s, the cinnamon fire sticks was one of the most popular flavors, which isn't a surprise because that's the flavor that got the whole candy ball rolling. Back in the 1950s, Dorothy and Bill Holmson ran an ice cream store in Golden, Colorado that they named Jolly Rancher. They sold candy as well, mostly from other manufacturers, but the Holmsons had created their own recipe for a hot cinnamon taffy stick. It was so popular that they moved into candy manufacturing. Unfortunately, the longer stick eventually disappeared, although some longer versions of a couple of flavors sold online several years ago. Those are now out of stock too. Okay. Caravelle. A number of candy bars started life as direct competition to other candy bars, with similar ingredient combinations, but enough of a difference in taste, texture, and appearance to avoid copyright issues. Caravelle from the Peter Paul Candy Company wasn't the competition. However, it was outlasted by a competitor that, according to Caravelle fans, wasn't even close in terms of flavor and texture. Caravelle started off its short life in 1965, only to be challenged by the introduction of the 100,000 ball in 1966. That's now known as the 100 grand ball. Both balls had caramel centers wrapped in chocolate with crispy rice, but Caravelle had a better texture and softer caramel. You would think that a ball with such a description would have had a longer life, but no, it was discontinued around the end of 1977 or beginning of 1978. And it's not known whether the reason was a shelf life issue that could just be a rumor, or the fact that Cadbury Schweppes by Peter Paul around that time too. It wouldn't be unusual for a new owner to revamp a newly acquired company's line of products. Plain chocolate and became chunky flavors. Chunky balls are still available. It may be an original product in brick and mortar stores, but you can still find chunky balls online no matter where you are. However, this flavor of chunky contains raisins and peanuts, kind of like a chocolate bar version of trail mix. And it isn't the original. In fact, the bar has been available in a few flavors that no longer exist. Two of these that we wish would come back are the pecan chunky and the plain chocolate chunky, which were available in the 1970s and 1980s. Chunky has been around in one form or another since the 1930s and the 1970s. It was literally a chunk of chocolate, though it was later reshaped in the 1980s into a thick square with 4 segments that were easier to break apart. The original chunk form was the basis for much of its marketing, using the slogan "Taste thicker, chocolate light."
Chocolate light?
Chocolate light. Chocolate light was a aerated bar, meaning that its center had a honeycomb-shaped texture that was most often described as bubbly. The bar was divided into segments, and each segment had an imprint of what looked like a stylus cross section of an orange half. The filling contained honey and something that nasty company called crispy chips. Chocolate Light was most often compared to the Aero Bar, a UK candy bar that was similar, but that did not contain honey or those crispy chips. And those are good. Chocolate Light was introduced around 1971 or 1972 and was sold for about 10 years and actually wasn't the first aerated bar in the U.S. Nestor had tried selling one called Bubble Back in the 1930s, which also contained honey. The more mention of Chocolate Light can start off rounds of people happily reminiscing about the bars and how they wish it will come back. It was very popular. So it's kind of a surprise that it was discontinued. Any nostalgia candy companies looking for a new old recipe to bring back might want to consider this one. Dynamits. Dynamits were the slightly stronger cousin of Tic Tacs, and both were pretty much copies down to the type of dispensers they came in. The only differences were that the Dynamits container was wider than it was tall, while the Tic Tac container was taller than it was wide. Plus, the Dynamits themselves were a little slicker, a little bigger, and shaped more like soft gels than Tic Tacs. Dynamits were from the Dantine Company, which also made gum. The mints were very popular and remained available in the 1980s. But by the 1990s, there were no more, and it's not known why. One of the more interesting features was the Dynamits had a flavor called regular, with no hint of what the flavor was, except for the fact that the candies were colored red. Online comments noted that the regular flavor was cinnamon. Some of the flavors were combinations, such as the much missed fruit flavor that was a mix of orange, cherry, and grape. Snick Snack Sticks. SNIKSNAKSTIKS. Remember back in the Killerville section when we said that some candy bars were meant to be competition for another bar? And they usually had enough differences to avoid copyright issues. M&M bars pushed that to the limit with this next entry. The company created Snick Snack Sticks in 1973 as a way to compete with Kit Kat bars from Hershey. And let's just say that similarities are very interesting. Not only were Snick Snacks shaped the same, the only difference being that Snick Snacks had 6 sticks instead of the 4 you find in a Kit Kat package. But the name also used the same format, Kit Kat Snick Snack, and even the tagline and commercials and ads were almost the same. Kit Kat had been using "Have a break, have a Kit Kat," and M&M's Malls decided the tagline for Snick Snack would be "Take a break, take a Snick Snack." Additionally, Snick Snacks were chocolate-covered waffle sticks that looked a lot like smaller Kit Kats. Snick Snacks were not meant for the world. however lasting fewer than 6 years. Hopefully I was saying that ball right, I don't know. Now the original chocolate covered Sugar Mama caramel pop. Anyone who's spent time in a candy aisle has likely seen sugar babies, those yellow and red bags of candy coated caramel pastels. Maybe you found sugar daddies, the original member of the sugar family. These are rectangular pearl caramel lollipops that are normally available in a small size that's just a couple of inches long. If you're lucky, you'll see the giant sugar daddies, which are slabs of caramel straight out of any caramel fan's happiest dreams. For a time, there was a third member of the family, Sugar Mama. This was a caramel pop similar to the similar Sugar Daddy, but coated in chocolate. She was the last to be introduced. Sugar Daddy was first manufactured under another name from 1925 to 1932, after which it got its current name. And sugar babies were introduced in 1935. Sugar Mama came along in 1965, but was continued in the 1980s. It's not clear why, although theories include the fact that it wasn't interesting to people's changing taste and that the packaging was just different, even so that people didn't realize it was part of the sugar factory. Several years ago, a new version of Sugar Mama appeared. But these were small caramels in a wrapper with no stick, more like regular caramel soft candy. It appears to be no longer available. The next one, 7-Up ball. Never heard that one, but okay. If you were waiting to find out which 70s candy got knocked out of the way by legal issues, this is it. The 7-Up ball, sometimes abbreviated by customers as 7-Up. Although it wasn't related to the soda, had 7 sections with different fillings. That's 7 flavors in one bar. It was a unique creation. The flavors were mint, nougat, butterscotch, caramel, buttercream, fudge, and coconut. Basically something for everyone. This ball sounds great for sharing. This ball was introduced in the 1930s and it remained popular throughout the 1970s. Unless the very descriptive name was also the main cause of the ball's demise. It was relatively expensive to produce, and rising costs made it harder to keep up production. The name was also the subject of a trademark dispute with the company that owned 7-Up soda. Even though the bar had been around since the 1930s, it was obviously not soda flavored. 7-Up had been around since the 1920s, and the trademark dispute couldn't be resolved.
So who's older, the pop or
The-
the candy?
I'm guessing the pop.
Okay.
There was a similar bar from NECCO called the Sky Bar, which had 4 filled segments, but it was discontinued in 2018 before being brought back by a similar company a few years later. The Christie Bar. The Christie Bar is one of those candies that, if you go by the amount of information that's easily available, was one of the most upscale bars ever released. If you ask people who were around in the early and mid-1970s, they'll tell you about stopping at the store each week to buy a Christie bar. People remember this bar, but for some reason there's not much information out there. The Christie bar, originally spelled Christie before being renamed, was introduced in 1969 by Concord Confections. It was a bar of French nougat with nuts mixed in, and the whole bar was coated with a creamy candy layer. It was available for only a few years, and its packaging was fairly memorable because it included a picture of a smiling blonde girl when that style of packaging wasn't common. Some have said that Zero Candy Bar tastes similar, but according to comments online, the two aren't quite the same. Summit. Summit cookie bars are another candy that didn't last very long, but in this case the reasons were obvious. Summit was a waffle-style candy bar with a peanut filling, waffles, and chocolate coating. It was introduced in 1977 by Mars and shaped sort of like a Trix bar with two to a package. Sounds great to eat, at least flavor-wise. While people intentionally liked the bar and its waffle center, there were some who wasn't thrilled with the peanuts. The major issue, though, was that the chocolate melted quickly, making the bars messy to eat. They'd even melt in the package, making storage an issue. Freezing the bars in hopes of making the chocolate less melty led to tough bars that were basically inedible until they thawed, and that likely means the chocolate wouldn't melt again. Mars tried increasing the chocolate and decreasing the amount of wafers and removing the peanuts. Reviews of the new version were mixed and not that great overall, with some people not really tasting the difference. The summer ball was discontinued by the mid-1980s. Space Dust Cosmic Candy. Later renamed Cosmic Candy, Space Dust was a sibling product to Pop Rocks. Both were invented by the same person, and the two candies really weren't in competition because they were different. Space Dust was pretty much a powdered version of Pop Rocks. Space Dust was introduced in 1978, and it became popular on the East Coast of the U.S. One of the candy's distinguishing features was the packaging, which featured trippy art and colors that were related to the flavor, such as purple for grape flavored Space Dust. The artist who created the package graphics for Space Dust, by the way, was Doug Johnson, who also created the album cover art for some of Judas Priest's albums. Space Dust quickly encountered some criticism because of its name. Parents thought it was too close to the name of the drug Angel Dust, and General Foods agreed, changing the name to Cosmic Candy. Unfortunately, the candy hit another roadblock with rumors emerged in 1979 that eating popping candy like Pop Rocks while drinking soda, would cause your stomach to explode. As unlikely as that sounded, the rumors did lead to Pop Rocks and other popping candy falling out of favor by the early 1980s.
It sounds like the whole thing where you put Mentos in pop and it explodes.
Yeah. But Cosmic Candy is no more. Static Media owns and operates the Deli Meal in Chillhound. Okay. That is all I have today. And you know the drill. Like, subscribe, comment, and ring the bell.
Not like the bell.
Not like the bell. And if there's things you want me to talk about or what, just let me know. So for now, be safe out there. And have a good day and the rest of your week. And I'll see you when I see you.